got misplaced, so this that's fine.
Yeah, she's in the bedrooms and stuff.
Okay, well, here comes my wife Sid to join us.
Well, let me say hello to everyone. It's time. It's 12:30, and we have a very interesting program today, and we want to allow maximum time. So let me call to order the oldest Lions Club in the world, and let me proceed and say welcome to everyone and Happy New Year, as some of you have already noted. And let me ask Mark, you are our Zoom host today. Remind us about our procedures for Zoom, please.
Sure. The big one is that if you're not speaking, please mute your microphone, because sometimes there's some background noise that interferes with the operation. So that's pretty the major thing is if you're not speaking, please go ahead and mute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, we're ready for our pledge, and I will lead the pledge today, being the first meeting of the year. So as you're able, if you will please stand, and Mark, if you will have the words up on the screen. Let's all say together our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Yeehaw!
Yeehaw! All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. So let me say again, welcome to everyone, especially to our guest speaker, and he'll be introduced in a moment. And but it's wonderful to get together again, even though we've just had a 2-week absence since our last meeting. It just seemed like forever, and I've been missing everyone. So I'm glad to see everyone that looks safe. Trust you were safe, and now we're in the new year with some optimism and a little hiccup already this past week. But we'll stay on the positive side. And just to kind of ease into all of this, let me share with you a little show and tell. Santa Claus to the president of the Austin Founder Lions Club. What would Santa Claus bring? But is Patty here? I don't know if Patty's on, but this is a replica of Mufasa, I believe it's, or Mufusa. Yeah, from The Lion King, and who should follow but Simba. And here's little Simba. So yay, I was well protected by all our lion friends. And as if that wasn't enough, just one more show and tell, and this is out of wood and from Guatemala. So anyway, I've got caught up a little bit with all my lion friends. So and I trust everyone else received what they were wanting, or a surprise from Santa Claus during this time. And if you want to share that on the chat and something special, feel free to do that. All right. Do we have any? Yes. Do we have any guests today that we would like to recognize? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay. So, and we'll have others joining us, and perhaps some guests will join us at that time. Let me proceed then with announcements. My first announcement is that we as a Lions Club will continue doing service through the Meals on Wheels. that our next opportunity to help with Meals on Wheels will be on Friday, January 22nd. Friday, January 22nd. Our procedure generally has been, and I'm sure will continue to be there about 8:30 or by 8:30. And then it's from 8:30 until 11:30 on that Friday morning. So I ask that you put it on your calendar and join us and help us as you're able to. After that January 22nd, we'll have one meeting or one service opportunity in February the 19th, and another one in March on March the 19th. So we'll have reminders about that later. Want to share this good news. At our December 10th meeting, we had Dr. Stephanie Elizalde, ASD superintendent, with us, and she was invited to join our Founder Lions Club, and she accepted. We have received her application, and it will be presented to the board at our January 21st meeting. And so we're very pleased that she is joining our Founder Lions Club, and thank you for Tommy and for Terry for helping make that, bringing that about. So our first new member for this year. Also want to ask Judy, is Judy saw? Yeah, I'm sorry, Tommy, did you want to make a comment?
You're muted, Tommy.
I believe you're muted.
Yeah, there were little red markers there.
Yeah, Tommy, go ahead. I'm not sure that.
Tommy, you're muted. Need to turn your microphone on.
Nobody's
Although
saying
you
something.
sound better when you are muted.
See, all these people with the
It
red.
changes look so.
Yeah. Tommy, I'm sorry, we're going to move on, and then you come back and wave at us. I'm not sure what the issue is there. I was asking if Judy Saul was on yet.
I'm here.
Okay. Oh, Judy, yeah, thank you. Would you make the announcement about the recycling and our eyeglasses, please?
Yep, it's the beginning of a new year, so I'm kind of revamping the eyeglass thing, kind of updating it and refreshing it. So I know before our meetings ended, our in-person meetings ended due to COVID, several people took boxes, and I need everyone to let me know if you took a box, where you're putting it, and the phone number of the place. And then everybody who's already been on the program, if you could just kind of update with letting me know which locations you're covering, and with your name and phone number. And also, I would like to ask that everybody on the boxes put your first name and phone number so the places can contact you if their boxes are full and overflowing. And then you can put my name and first name and phone number as a secondary backup to that. I get every once in a while somebody will track me down because they have an overflowing box. So, they're helping us help the needy. So I'd appreciate, if you can put your name on the box and let me know which places you're collecting for. Thank you. That's it.
All right, thank you, Judy. And this is, let me remind everyone that this is a service project from our club to the community about recycling eyeglasses, and the Lions are known throughout the world for vision, helping correct and prevent blindness. So let's do our part here in Austin and look after the recycled boxes. And thank you, Judy, for leading this.
I just want to add real quick,
Yes.
there'll be an email going out to everyone a little bit more detailed.
Sounds
That's
good.
it.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, Tommy, let me get back with you.
What?
Still can't hear
Are
you.
we on now?
Yeah, now we got you.
Ah, there we got me. Well, simply to do a follow-up report on the superintendent. She was so enamored by the responses we had at her presentation and all the events and activities, including the pre-screening of her pre-K 3 students, if and when that happened, that she made a $500 donation. I picked up her check. It cleared the bank, and Jim Roberson has it in hand. So I just wanted you to know our superintendent hit the ground running, is very, very impressed with our Lions Club history. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Tommy. All right, and I believe that takes care of our announcements. Well, there is one more. On January 21st, in 2 weeks, we'll have our next Board of Directors meeting. And so anyone else have any announcements? So that, all right, okay. And for birthdays this week, we have a January 3rd birthday. That was this past Monday, I believe. And that was Norman. So Norman Tyring. Norman, wave to it so everybody can see you.
Hello, everybody.
Yes. Oh, he's got a show and tell also.
I'm here, and I want to thank everybody for remembering me. And I put this on because this goes back to the early 60s when I keep, at this time of year, I'm thinking of comfort food. And I started first going to McDonald's hamburgers in 1962 in Evansville, Indiana. And I probably haven't been going since, but it seems like everywhere we moved around the world, if they had a McDonald's hamburger restaurant, I was willing to live there and enjoy their food. Maybe I'm not as fanatic as I used to be, but I tell you, this guy's kept me well and healthy with a wonderful comfort food.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, thanks very much for that update. And another birthday we want to recognize is on January the 9th. Let's see, today's the 7th. So that's coming up this Saturday. Melissa Code, I believe, C-O-A-D. Melissa's having a birthday, so we extend our congratulations to her and best birthday wishes. And also our own Peggy Bruner. Peggy Bruner is having a birthday on the 12th of January. So happy birthday to Peggy. So did we miss anyone? Okay, yeah, Mark?
This is not a birthday, but my guest has joined us today. My wife, Kathy Thomas, she heard that Ken was going to speak, and she wanted to be here to hear what he has to say, his musings.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to Kathy. It's always good to have her as part of our meeting. All right. Well, I believe we are at that important part of the of our agenda where we are ready for the program. So to introduce our program and our speaker, I'm going to ask John Niefler if you will take it from here.
Rudy,
John?
thank you very much. I'm happy to do so. We are fortunate today to have Ken Herman as our speaker. Ken is the insightful and award-winning columnist for the Austin American-Statesman and is syndicated in newspapers all across the United States. Ken has come to know us in Texas from his writing assignments in such places as Lufkin and Harlingen and Houston, Washington, D.C., and again here in Austin. His columns in the last couple of days have pointed out the embarrassment to all Texans of the actions of those people we Texans have elected to public office.
Hey,
Ken, we are very, very grateful for your being with us today. I'm sorry that we've asked you to share your observations of our life together at such a dull and uneventful time as the last 2 or 3 days. But in any case, Lions, please help me make welcome journalist Ken Herman.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Hope everybody's doing well. I want to add one thing, not a birthday, but today is my wedding anniversary. I'd bring my wife here, but
Oh.
probably anniversary, probably upset her to bring her in. It is number 43. And it's been a happy day. It's nice to talk to the oldest Lions Club. I've looked around the screen here, and some of you don't look like very old Lions, so it's looking good. You know, we're all getting used to these Zoom events, and you know, I think the double truth of these is they're awful, and it would be horrible if they didn't exist. At least it's a way for people to sort of stay in touch with each other, and it's not great, but we're surviving this. I have this recurring nightmare that Dr. Fauci is going to come on TV someday and find out they've discovered that COVID can be spread via Zoom, and then we're all doomed. It'll be Zoom and doom. Any of you ever try to put out a newspaper during a pandemic, either this one or the pandemic 100 years ago? It's been a challenge. I'll talk to you a little about that today. Mostly I want to take your questions as soon as we can get to that, so I know I'm talking about something at least one person is interested in. Hope you like my background here. Yes, I'm fabulously wealthy. I have a high-rise condo in downtown, and that's the view from my window. It's now twilight there for some reason. I don't know why. The pandemic hit, as we recall, last March, and it was an odd time for me because I happened to be on a trip with my wife and some friends to South Africa, and almost got stranded there, but managed to get back. And by the time we came back, the newspaper basically had shut down the office, and it's been pretty much shut down since then. People can go in if they want, very few do, and it's a challenge putting out the paper, but it's actually gone okay because of things like Zoom and all kinds of computer communications techniques we manage. What you miss the most is just the contact with other humans. And one of the most things, I'm fortunate, the paper, I don't have to go to many meetings. Editors and other people are in meetings all the time. I have had that experience in the past in other positions. I don't like it. But what I do miss is just people. And what you don't know is what you're missing. You know, the things you overhear in the office, you know, just the human contact. And it's going to be interesting when normal returns, and I'm assured it will return for everybody. It seems like some people have found working at home works for them. Others don't. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens on the back end of it. I think at first, a lot of people, especially if you have young kids running around the house that you had to worry about educating and raising, it probably was kind of okay. People could go a while working in their pajamas. But I think a lot of people are finding they miss the human contact. It's really interesting to see what employers do about it. I mean, if you have a lot of office space, say in Manhattan or even in Austin, you're paying a lot of money. And if people can work at home and it's working out okay, some employers may decide that they never want to come back to everyone coming to the office. We'll see. It also hit at a very odd time for the Austin American-Statesman. As you perhaps have heard, this industry is in turmoil. It's just not what it once was. The short version is advertising has gone away. People have found other ways to advertise, cheaper and easier to target certain audiences for certain kind of advertising. And subscribers have gone away. There are many ways to get information for free. I advise you generally get what you pay for. But this newspaper was owned for about 45 years by the Cox family out of Atlanta. It was a privately held company by the Cox family. Very wealthy people owned a lot of newspapers, a lot of cable TV, diverse holdings. A few years ago, they decided the numbers weren't working for them anymore, and they sold most of their newspapers. They still have the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. That's an Atlanta-based family. And that's their big paper. They used to have papers all over the place, and like a lot of people, they've decided not the way to go. Again, it was unfortunate for us because it was a good employer, frankly. They were good to us, and they were privately held. And the key there was, while shareholders are what makes America great, they can be a nuisance to satisfy, especially in a declining industry like the newspaper business. So when the family owned it, they could just do what they want for whatever reason they want because it was their money and only their money. They sold out at first to a company called Gatehouse, which actually is based somewhere in upstate New York, owned a lot of small newspapers around the country, had a presence in Austin through basically an editing place where they would do editing and page design for lots of their newspapers and other newspapers around the country. So we were owned by Gatehouse for a while. It's publicly held, about 3 levels of hedge funds and who knows what, and it was it was fine. I mean, again, this industry somewhat is in a survival mode. And then where are we now? About a year and a half ago or so, Gatehouse merged with Gannett. Now, actually what they did was they bought Gannett. And Gannett is the biggest owner of newspapers in the country. They own about 250 daily newspapers around the country in various cities. Their biggest is USA Today, where my wife worked for 11 years when we were in DC, and for a while when we came back to Austin after our DC years. So now we're owned by Gannett. It's a giant company, and it's publicly held. They carefully watch the stock price every day go up and down. And like all newspapers, trying to figure out how to survive. And it's a difficult challenge because we now have to charge the end user, the subscriber, a lot more than we used to. A subscription to the print paper is, to me, shockingly expensive. God bless any of you who are still doing it. And that because where the revenues come from has changed from advertisers who used to provide most of the money for most of the years, for most of our lifetimes. Newspapers could have given the paper away for free and made a nice, healthy living just off of advertising. But the tradition was a token payment from the subscriber or the single copy purchaser, and it worked for many years. Newspapers were fabulously profitable, especially in cities where there was only one newspaper, which is most of them in the later years. It's funny, when I was growing up many years ago in Brooklyn, New York, there were 7 daily newspapers. It's hard to believe now, and somehow they all made money. Some of them have faded away over the years, but they still have 3 there. So that's that's the change. Now, the problem is the advertising has gone away, and just little things. If you look at our classified ads section now, I'm amazed there are any. There's about a half a page of classified ads. Many of you may remember when the classified ads were page after page of people selling things to each other. A few dollars at a time, classified ads provided a lot of money for newspapers. Went away. Craigslist came along, other ways. There just were other ways to do it. So that source of revenue is gone. Same thing for news product. People don't like to pay for news product, at least of a certain age. They think it's something they're entitled to for free, and you can find it. Now, a lot of times the free sources are sort of pirating off those of us who are trying to make a living and raise families doing this. But that's the way of the world now. And the other thing I think that's hurt newspapers is a newspaper is a general interest publication. We like to think there's a little something for everybody in there. Not everything is for everybody. You may not like the sports section, you may not like the recipes, but the way we always sort of made a living and made a profit was something for everybody. I think that's become a challenge too because of the proliferation of special interest products. If you like sports, there's all kinds of places to go to. If you like a specific sports team, there's all kinds of places to go to. If you're interested just in politics, then there are places to go for that. If you're interested just in state government, there are places to go for that. So that's a challenge too. So that's where newspapers are now as we try to figure this out. And what it's meant is our staff is smaller than it once was. Again, as I tell everybody, I've been in this business for a little over 45 years. And I am fortunate to have done most of those 45 years in the golden years when the money was flowing and competition among newspapers was hot and heavy and the money was spent to compete. In my Washington years, I covered the White House and George W. Bush years, and then it was for the Cox chain that then owned the Statesman, a bunch of other newspapers. And we had a large bureau up there, 15, 20 people, including some people around the world. And we spent a lot of money. I would go on foreign trips when the president traveled around the world. And in a 3, 4, 5-day trip, it might cost $15,000, $18,000, and we would pay it. Now, we didn't make all the trips, but we made a lot, if not most of them. And that was a lot of money. And of course, I was happy to do it. And I would tell them, oh, no, it's crucial that I go to Mongolia for this trip for another $12,000 or something. And no one batted an eye because the profits were supported that kind of spending. That is ancient history now. And who knows where it's heading. The weird thing now is, we basically have two products or two ways of delivering the product. The print edition, which we, still sell and sell a lot of them, but nowhere near as much as we used to, and the online product. In a strange but realistic way, the goal is to get rid of the print product. And here's why. Nobody much younger than us is ever going to consume the print product again. For years, in my earlier years in this business, we struggled to get young people to read the paper, had all kinds of things. By young people, I'm talking, 20s or so, or even younger. We would, give newspapers away to schools, try to get people addicted to the newspaper habit. And we always had trouble getting young people to read the paper or buy the paper, hopefully buy and read, but certainly buy. But we knew this, when they got a little older, when maybe they started paying taxes or had kids in school, we'd get them eventually. And the reason was simple. We sort of had a monopoly on the flow of information. TV news exists, radio news exists, but in most cities, there's one newspaper or was one newspaper, and it had, control of, where news would come in from elsewhere in the country and the world. And there were other things that, a friend of mine years ago now, who's now retired, he told me first time he knew something was changing was when movie theaters stopped paying to put in the paper what time the movies started, because they had found a better way to get to potential customers, and obviously cheaper and more efficient. But that was the kind of thing, while reporters always think, oh, it's our deathless pros that sell the paper. We know the reality. The reality is it might be in the old days, the TV listings or the stock market listings or the movie times. We were sort of a public utility. There were certain things, certain forms of information. If you wanted it, you were probably going to your newspaper. That era is long gone. So the conundrum now is we have the print product and a variety of online products. And online subscribing is much cheaper than getting the print edition. The truth is, the print edition will go away someday. The problem is, as we sit here today, even in its shrinking numbers, it provides a lot of revenue because, frankly, people who still get the print product are kind of addicted to it. I try to tell people all the time, everything that you get in the print product, you can get online. You can get it online. You also can get the print product online. It's called an e-version of the paper. It's the pages of the paper, and you just scroll through them on your iPad or your computer. It's pretty good, and there's nothing to haul out to recycling or put in the bird cage. But some people have the habit, and that's fine. I'm the same way, but that's going to be gone. That will not go on much into the future. How many more years for the print product? I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, 2 years. The goal, again, is to get people to the online product. Part of the problem is the online product doesn't produce enough advertising revenue to support the enterprise, at least not at this point. And that's the challenge. And, it's funny, in our newspaper, I'd say, it's been going on for a while now, for the past 10 years or so, under various owners, they'd come in, oh, we've got this great new idea. This is going to be great. We'll try this great new idea. And then 6 months later, oh, we got another great new idea. Forget about that old great new idea. Cynical though I tend to be, I don't scoff at that, because if they weren't trying everything and anything, I'd be saying, why aren't you trying everything and anything? Because we are at a great turning point here where someone's got to figure out how to make this work. And it's a problem. The other challenge we face is our hopeful audience, the audience we hope to reach, is a universe called human beings. Many of you may be human beings. And here's something about human beings. Many human beings like to get their information from a source with which they know they agree. We've got Fox for some people. We have MSNBC for some people. We have CNN for some people. We have things far to the right of Fox now. And it's okay, but I'm not sure it's healthy. We're all better off if everyone exposes themselves to different ideas, but humans like to just get their own views certified and agreed with. One of the favorite emails I get is I'll get an email from a reader says, Herman, you're an idiot. You're stupid. You're a stupid idiot. I read you all the time and you're a stupid idiot. Now, my first reaction always is it's nice to hear from family. But beyond that, what I tell these people, and I'm not being sarcastic, but I've yet to convince anyone I'm not being sarcastic, is you are a great human being. And here's why. You are telling me you're pretty sure you're going to disagree with me all the time, but you keep reading me. I wish I was as good as that at exposing myself to ideas that I think I might not agree with. We'd all be better off if we did that. And our segmented society today, it's getting worse and worse about that. And what we saw go on yesterday in Washington is the sad, I hope, end result of that. And it doesn't go even further than that, but it was a frightening day. Talk a little bit before I hope to get some questions about what I do at the paper. Here's what I do at the paper. I do whatever I want. It's an amazing scam. I recommend it. I'm a columnist, meaning what I write is my opinion, my view of the world. Why does the world need to know my opinions? Only because my employer pays me to do it. And again, a great scam. My employer, I have an editor, for style and spelling and things like that, but I have pretty much total freedom. I write about whatever I want to write about. The editors don't know what I'm writing about till I turn it in. Sometimes I'll give them some advance notice. I'll make sure I'm not duplicating something someone else might be doing, but I do whatever I want. And I write about what interests me. And really, all I have to do is please the readers, but really, all I have to do is please my editors, and they'll keep giving me money to do this. It's, most of my career, I've covered politics, so that's always an interest to me, but I'm interested in a variety of things. And I find these days, I think what I enjoy writing about the most is topics and things involving people who aren't in newspapers a lot. After a while, talking to politicians gets a little old. Some are interesting, but it is what it is. Regular people are often more interesting. So I look forward to those sort of human interest things that come along. But it's matter of fact, it's such a good deal recently. Last year, there were layoffs at the paper. There were furloughs. We all had to take like 3 weeks off without pay. And they recently offered buyouts to, reduce the payroll. It's sad, but that's the reality. And, I thought about taking the buyout because, frankly, after the last legislative session, I told myself just before the next legislative session, which starts next Tuesday, I'd think about, is it time to retire or not? And, I pretty much decided I wouldn't. But then they came along with this buyout offer. And the short version is I would have got about 6 months of pay to stop working. They would have paid me not to work there. So it was tempting. But then I thought this. My fear was if I took the buyout and 3 months from now regretted it, it was an irreversible decision. I'm not going to get another job, and I could not get hired back at the Statesman under the terms of the buyout. On the other hand, if I didn't take it, which I didn't do, if in 3 months from now I decide, I've had enough, I'm fortunate to be at a point in life where, having walked away from a few months' salary is not going to greatly impact how I live the rest of my life. So I was fortunate. Plus, this next legislative session, which again starts next Tuesday for 140 days of making your life better each and every day. It's going to be a session. I first came to Austin in 1979 and covered every legislative session since then, except for my 5 years or so in Washington. And this one is going to be different because, as you may have heard, there is a pandemic going on. And they rightfully are going to have all kinds of different rules now about how the public can interact and watch the legislature, and obviously as the press can. And it's going to be, and I'm working towards a Sunday column on it, it's going to be a challenge because, and it's easy to joke about the Texas legislature because a lot of it is odd, but frankly, I enjoy it. We in Texas, as reporters, compared to a lot of reporters covering capitals around the country, have had a great benefit. And that benefit is in the House and the Senate, as long as I've been here, we're allowed on the floor of the House and Senate. Have to stay outside the rails where they sit, but you have great access. And if you want to talk to a legislator, you just, hail him or her down. And if they want to talk to you, they will. If they don't want to talk to you, they won't. But it's great access. Plus, especially on long, dull day, especially in the House, you sort of get to know the people. You're just chatting with them. And most of them are almost like normal human beings. I've always said about the Texas legislature, it's perfectly representative of the population. About 10% of them are geniuses there to do the greatest good. About 10% of them are thieving crooks. And the other 80% are wondering what's for lunch. And that's just like the rest of us. Why not? Why should it be any other way? This year, because of COVID, and I hate that this happens, and I hope it's just temporary, but we will not be allowed on the floor in the chambers. And the House and the Senate will be upstairs in the galleries, and in the Senate and probably the House, there'll be a limited number of us will be allowed in every day. And it's just not going to be as good. I understand it, and I hope it's not just an excuse, because especially on the Senate side, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has been trying to get us out of the chamber for years. He just doesn't like us. I don't know why. We're so nice. And a lot of the senators haven't liked that we can just come up to them on the floor. And it changed last session. We were allowed in, but we had to remain in our seats at the table at the front of the chamber, which was still okay, because a lot of senators would drop by to chat with us, to talk about a topic of the day, or show us a picture of a new grandchild or something. It was, I thought, good, healthy human interaction. And the grumpy ones who didn't want to talk to us didn't talk to us. So at least for the first 60 days of the session on both sides, House and Senate, we're going to be up in the gallery, and it's just not going to be as good. It's also important to note that for years now, all legislative proceedings, floor sessions, committee hearings have been live streamed and also archived. So, and that's a great thing. You can go back if you missed a hearing or something happened, you didn't really know you were going to want to know about it. You go back and you can see a committee hearing from 10 years ago and see what somebody said. It's really good. The problem with that is, again, it's kind of like Zoom, far better than nothing, but not optimal. The problem is you are restricted to seeing what their cameras want you to see. 99.9% of the time, that's what you're going to want to see, because you're going to want to see, the cameras on whoever is talking. The problem gets to be, especially on the House side and sometimes in the Senate, sometimes things get a little wild in there, and there's action or something you want to see going on off camera, and you just don't have full access to it. But again, I'm going to start out sympathetic to the fact that they've got to be careful this year. You got to be, it's COVID is real, and I think they're going to be testing us almost every day when we go in. And in a enclosed setting like that, things can spread quickly, and they have to be careful. My fear is on the back end of this, maybe especially on the Senate side, they'll never let us back on the floor. But I just don't feel like right now I can protest too much, because as much as I don't like this, I understand why it needs to be different this year. I mean, everything else in life is different. Why shouldn't that be? They're also on the Senate side, and this does bother me. We've been told that press will not be allowed into committee hearings. A lot of the action, especially in the first 2 months of the session, goes on in committee hearings. And they're saying that because they want to make as many seats available as possible for the public. Well, that's sort of making me, as a member of the public, in addition to a reporter, giving me less access than members of the public. Same thing, the hearings are all videoed. You can see them, you can watch them after the fact, but it just, it's not as good. Unknown to me at this point, and both sides, House and Senate, will pass rules probably the first day when they meet at noon next Tuesday, on what public access is going to be to committee hearings. Committee hearings are the only place where the public can testify on a bill, yay, nay, or otherwise. And, it's vital. There's no reason why via Zoom, the people have to be there in person. The problem I've heard from some legislators is they're concerned, and it's a legitimate concern, of opening up too much. There are some committee hearings, rare, most bills, it's cooked before a committee hearing, a couple people testify, and they vote. The legislators will vote as they will. I think it's the rare committee hearing that changes any legislator's mind on how he or she is going to vote on a bill, but you got to have the public hearings. The concern I've heard is, if they make it too easy, if you can Zoom in from Lubbock in your pajamas, how are you going to limit the number of people who testify? And every session, there are many hearings that go till 3 a.m. because they got to churn through a couple of hundred witnesses who are there live in person. And they've obviously at least cleared the hurdle of finding their way to Austin and finding the committee room and sitting around for hours, because you often don't know, the bills don't come up in any order. A good committee chairman, if he or she wants to, will start with the one that has the most people to testify, but some of them will hold that to the end just to hope that some of the witnesses will, give up and won't have the endurance to sit there for 5 hours before the bill comes up in which they're interested. So, there's this balance between public access, or as one legislator told me last week, making it an online poll of the whole state of hundreds of people testifying. Even if you limit them to 2 or 3 minutes each, it becomes unwieldy. These are all tough decisions the legislature is going to have to make, and I'm sure they'll come down somewhere in the middle. One theory I heard was they might make you come to the Capitol to testify, but you won't be in the room with the committee. You might be in another room with a camera so you can interact with them, but not exposing yourself or them, or having germs fly around in a room. It's all difficult. There's nothing good about this. And as some of you may know, I was an early adopter of COVID, picked it up, we think at JFK Airport on my way home from South Africa last March. And I am short of all the people who are walking around who don't even know they had it, I'm the most fortunate COVID survivor. I had such mild symptoms, mild cough, and then some fatigue, but such that if not for knowing a pandemic was going on, not only would it wouldn't have crossed my mind to call the doctor, I probably would have gone to work, which is always a bad idea anyway when you have a cough, but I was very fortunate. A few months later, I tested. I still had significant antibodies, and I had my annual physical a couple of weeks ago, and they tested me again, and I still have immunity, or the antibodies. And again, it could go away tomorrow. There's still so much about this we don't know. I asked my doctor still, should I be getting the shot when and if I can find it? He said, absolutely, because whatever antibodies you have now, could disappear. So like a lot of us in the 1B group, I am 66 years old. My wife and I have been searching around to see if we can find the vaccine someplace. And when we open it up to Q&A, I'd like to hear from any of you if you've been able to find it any place. I'm on all kinds of wait lists. Some of them, I'm not sure if it's a wait list where next thing I'm going to hear is show up tomorrow at 10:15, or it's going to be just, okay, now you can sign up to get an actual appointment. But it's, it's amazing. Everyone seems to know what the eligibility is now for the vaccine. The biggest problem is availability. And it just doesn't seem to be going too well around here in Austin. And it may have to be where we're going to just have to have, the government more involved, and, just parking lots, and you get online and drive through and get your shot, because it just doesn't seem to be going well now. And it's a shame that the easier part of this, and to me, it was the harder part, is scientists went from never knowing anything about this new disease to a vaccine for it in 7 or 8 months? I mean, someone's getting a Nobel Prize for this. It's amazing. The sad thing now is that we can't get it into people's arms. And I'm a little confused on what the problem is. My doctor's office, when I asked them, they said, no, you'll probably get it sooner via CVS or Walgreens or HEB than through the limited supply they're going to get. But we'll find out. And I would like to hear if any of you have succeeded in getting it, and if it hurt, because I'm not a big fan of shots. Let's go to questions. I can talk forever and it'll just bore you. So who needs to know something that I might possibly know something about?
Thank you very much, Ken.
Sure.
We have several questions, but let me ask Leonard and Mark. For some reason, my computer is not showing everyone, so I'm not sure who will be holding up their hands. But Leonard and Mark, could you kind of help with this, please?
Sure.
How about now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it changed it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that blew it. But anyway, help identify those that have a question, please.
I think Ann Rogers.
I have a question first via the chat. Steve Riley, raise your hand. Midwood High School? Steve is muted. Hello, Steve. Come in, Steve.
I know. To mute a Brooklyn guy is impossible to do. Midwood High School, class of 1985, sir. That's
85.
right.
I went to Midwood for 2 years before it left, because my family moved to South Florida in that unusual migration wave in 1969. So I did my first 2 years at Midwood before that. Would have graduated in 71. My brother went there and graduated. I think he graduated in 68 or 60, 67. But
Wow.
yeah, still a pretty good school from what I understand.
Well, it was, and in my wedding party, I'm Irish Catholic. In my wedding party, there were 6 Jewish guys and my brother. So as I say, I didn't have ushers. I had a law firm.
Yeah, yeah. What was weird to me was growing up in Brooklyn, I went to PS 99, which is the elementary school where Woody Allen went, and I think he still dates girls there, but that's a separate problem. And so my view of the world when I was growing up at PS 99, here's the world. Yeah, 97% Jewish, couple of Irish kids, 3 black kids, 2 of them were Jewish. Then I went to Midwood, and I said, the world's only about 60% Jewish. Then I moved to Florida, my high school there, so only about 30% Jewish. Then I went to Lufkin and went, where the hell is everybody?
Right.
Bit of a culture shock, but
I joke that I called all my Jewish friends in Austin to wish them a happy to wish them a happy Rosh Hashanah, and I left the guy a voicemail. So
yeah, that's my word. All right, enough of us chatting about the old days. And by the way, I hated the Yankees growing up. I see your license plate back there. I was a Mets fan. Well, we'll fight later. Okay, who's got a real question?
But Ann, why don't you go ahead?
Can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Ann.
Hey, I'll tell you. Hi, how you doing, Kim?
Good, good.
I'll tell you real quick. Here in Florida, the COVID vaccinations are going really poorly. I live in a rural county, and they're giving them out like from 9 to 12 in the morning. And the first day they had 2 nurses, and everybody was waiting in their cars for 4 hours. And the second day they had, the second time they did it, they had 4 nurses, same scenario, and the cops were turning us around, and we found out later we shouldn't have been turned around. And I think that the reason that my opinion that there's a problem is because there's no federal guidelines. They're just throwing the vaccine out there, and the overburdened states are trying to figure out what to do. Our governor told everybody in Florida, if you have vaccines, you can give it to anybody. So in my county, which has 20,000 people, I don't know how many vaccines we're getting, but the lines are filled with people from Panama City, Pensacola, urban areas that don't have any vaccine yet. They're coming here and they're getting the Holmes County stuff. That's fine. But when we run out, we're going to have to go to other counties, all the people in this county who didn't get it.
Yeah, in the same way, where Sharon and I, my wife and I, we've looked at, in Killeen and San Marcos and stuff, haven't had any luck. But it's a daunting challenge, but it's one we saw coming. I mean, while the scientists were mixing stuff in test tubes, someone should have been saying, well, once they get it, once we have the magic potion, how are we going to get it out there? I have the solution, because I have the solution to everything, is stick a nurse on every Amazon truck. They go to every house every day. What's the problem here? And then, and you may have to go on the truck with them for 15 minutes because you got to hang around and see if your arm explodes, I guess. So you go around and you can help make some deliveries or something. But
I like it. I do actually have a question for you, if you'll take a question from me. I know you've had some time in Washington, and so probably more than most of us, you have had interaction with the Capitol Police Force. What is your opinion of why the Capitol Police Force, despite knowing what was coming yesterday, was able to be overrun so quickly?
I think the question about how we get the vaccine in arms is easier to answer. I have no idea. And that they were just escorting people out of the building. Now, and again, this is beyond my expertise, but I guess at some level of policing, your first goal is to disperse the people and just get them out of there as soon as possible and worry about arresting people later, I guess. But they seem to just let them walk in. And among the horrifying pictures I saw was the racks, like the bicycle rack looking things that they use to set up barriers. People just picked them up, turned them this way, and used them as ladders to scale the wall. And, I know many of us have seen police interaction with protesters, or whatever you want to call these, in other situations where they seem to be, shall we say, more aggressive. And in this case, I don't know why. If someone just said, if the order went out, hey, we're overrun, and just let it happen and let it run its course. But it was foreseeable. I mean, our president has been telling us, I forgot the quote from a few weeks ago when he started telling people to come to Washington on July 6th, and the quote he used was, it's going to be wild.
Right.
This was not spontaneous. I don't know. I'd like to know how this woman got killed there. Obviously shot by law enforcement. I have no, like in a lot of these situations where people are quick to run to conclusions, I don't know the facts of what happened. Was she threatening somebody? Was she an innocent bystander and a bullet aimed for someone else? And we had 3 other people die who they say were medical, I guess heart attacks or strokes or things that happen when that many people get together, I guess. But it was surreal. I mean, watching that on TV, it was unfortunate. It's like so much these days, is this really happening?
Right.
And I don't know if this is the beginning of something or the end of something.
That woman was with the group that was trying to break into the House of Representatives. And
Yes.
when they started breaking the glass to the door, one of the policemen fired a shot, and she got hit. I don't know whether she was breaking the glass, but she was with that party that was trying to break into the House chambers when they had the doors barricaded and still had members in the chambers.
Terrible. Just
Gaylord, I think you had your hand up. Mac,
Yeah.
you're next. Mac, you're next.
Ken Gaylord Armstrong, and don't you dare go anywhere. I've got a lot of friends that if the only reason they continue to subscribe to the American Statesman is your column.
God bless these people. They're geniuses.
And I'm addicted. I had reared my grandparents on a dairy farm in Nacogdoches County, just north of your old stomping grounds of Angelina County. And the day began when at 5 in the morning, he'd go out and get the Houston Post, your old employer, and he'd spread it out. And all I could do is read the comics. But when I was able to read, I finally would get whatever he had read as he fried his squirrel and fixed it and his squirrel gravy over his biscuits. I've been addicted ever since. And I've noticed I started taking the American Statesman 61, and I've seen the change and had meetings with publishers about what they could do differently and all that. So much for that. But tell me, with your very interesting background, and particularly New York, Florida, and all that you've done since, what was the effect of living in a place like Lufkin, Texas, the effect on you and your perspective of journalism, given the great variety of your background?
Lufkin was fascinating. I was there for a little under 2 years, and it really was very eye-opening. And I'd never been to Texas before I moved to Lufkin, and I came to Texas with the stereotype that I now know is probably Lubbock and Amarillo. You understand, Lufkin and Nacogdoches is more like Louisiana. It's more deep south than Southwest, or what some people think of as Texas. And hey, Midwood Steve, I think we can tell from Gaylord's accent, he did not go to Midwood High School in Brooklyn, New York. And the other thing that was interesting in Lufkin, I got there in 1975. What I didn't appreciate at the time, and I do now in hindsight, is they had just shut down their Dunbar High School, the black high school, like 3 years before that. And I don't think I appreciated what that meant in a town like Lufkin of about 30,000 people. But when I think back now, it was not, racial paradise there, obviously. But in a lot of ways, I think some of the people in those small towns had more interaction with people that didn't look like themselves than a lot of urban people do, because you had 2 junior high schools in Lufkin, 1 high school. So for at least those years, everyone was sort of in school together. Again, I think the people were sitting with their own kind in the cafeteria, but there was exposure to other people. And I didn't appreciate back then what a big deal that was. The other thing is, when I first came to Lufkin, I flew in there, and editor, still my good friend Joe Murray over there, I flew into Houston, drove up there, and he drove me around, and we spent a couple of days together. After about 2 days, we could talk to each other without an interpreter because we both had accents of some sort. And so after about the second day, he stops his car and he says to me, "Ken, I'm going to offer you a job, but I need to tell you something about our little town." I figure, here it comes. They're all devil worshippers. This is going to be awful. And he said to me a phrase I had never heard before. He said, "Ken, this is a dry county." At first, I thought it never rained. Then he explained to me what it meant. And then he thought I'd be aghast at it. And then he was more upset by what he heard from me. For reasons no other than I've never liked the taste of it. I'm a prohibitionist. I've had like 1 alcoholic beverage in my life. I'm for banning it for everybody. So I told him, this is what I've been looking for forever. And he basically said to me, "No, you don't understand. It's not that we don't drink. We're drunk every night here, but we got to drive up to Nacogdoches across the river there to get it." But it was interesting. And what's great about small town newspapers then and now is you get to make mistakes, and very few people see it. The classic Lufkin story from many years ago, and still true, is I was covering an election for Angelina County Commissioner Precinct 3. Back then, as many of you will recall, the only primary that mattered was the Democratic primary. It was, some of these people, I was baffled by why they were Democrats. They always should have been Republicans, but we know the history. So there were 9 candidates running in precinct 3. One of them was K.E. Cotton Thompson. So I call all the candidates and I, get a little information about them. I write it up, put it in the paper. Day after it comes out, Mr. Thompson calls me and he says, Ken, I appreciate your write up in the paper, but you had a little mistake in there. And to this day, that is a heart-sinking feeling for a journalist. And the mistake I made is I had put in the paper as his occupation, he was a tar salesman, T-A-R. Of course, he sold the kind of, yeah, you're getting ahead of me here. He sold the tars down at the Farstone store that you put on your truck. And if I had a recording of it, he said to me, Ken, I'm a tar salesman. It's not my fault that he talked funny. And because God has a sense of humor, he got elected out of 9 candidates to the commissioner's court. And he just actually passed away a few years ago. But when he would speak at the commissioner's court, he'd write it out and hand it to me like simultaneous translation at the United Nations. I appreciated it. It was nice of him. But no, it's good to get a different view of things, and hard to get much different than Brooklyn and South Florida than deep East Texas. But I enjoyed my time there.
Well, did you get to know Charlie Wilson?
Oh, I knew Charlie well, and Charlie was the most un-East Texan of the, and the story always was that Good Time Charlie, as he was known. A lot of East Texans live vicariously through him. I mean, his I hate to say his morals, but let's say his lifestyle was not necessarily Bible Belt perfect. But what Charlie was, first of all, he's very friendly, but he was right on 2 things in East Texas: timber and defense, and mostly timber. You go a long way, keeping your constituents happy on timber issues in East Texas. And like a lot of legislators and members of Congress find out, constituent service can be more important than almost any vote you cast. If you help one person get their VA benefits or something, you got a friend for life. And a good elected official knows that and handles that one-on-one every time a case comes up, because you really can get a loyal supporter that way. But Charlie was just different, and a lot of people didn't like his lifestyle, but they kept voting for him.
And there's never been a more enjoyable book written than Charlie Wilson's War, which I would highly recommend to anybody that's never read it. Don't watch the movie, read the book. And
his escapades. When I was working for the Houston Post, I had a colleague in Washington who had gone to Afghanistan with him on some of those trips, and the stories are it's as fantastic as the movie. It's just crazy. And it's funny. Later in his life, Charlie, when he was out of Congress, I was working in D.C., and he was living in Crystal City, Virginia, right across from D.C. And he had a high-rise condo, and he had a view of the Pentagon. And right after 9/11, I got in touch with him. And he told me, and it was sad, that when he was watching the Pentagon burn and everything that was going on, he felt some guilt, because as part of his thing with the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, he had got a lot of weapons into that part of the world to our friends. And then things went to hell, and some of those things wound up in the hands of the bad guys. And he really, he felt like he had done the right thing, but he kept saying, I just didn't persist at it enough, and the weapons wound up in the bad guys' hands. And it was odd, and he really was deeply troubled about it.
Mac, before you ask your question, let me thank Ken for being with us today. There are other questions that haven't been asked. Ken, could you stay with us a little bit beyond the 1:30 adjournment time?
No problem.
Okay, thank you. Well, let me allow Mac to ask his question. That'll be the last question before we adjourn, but Ken has graciously is going to stay with us beyond that for other questions. So Mac, go ahead.
Well, Ken, I still subscribe to the Statesman, and I always will. And the reason is investigative journalism. And if newspapers go away, who is going to be calling out the crooked politicians in those? And I guess part B to that question is, why hasn't somebody figured out a way to make money from investigative journalism? Because nobody else, the internet, you can't believe anything on the internet. There's no ethics. So
yeah, well, what we'll have to do is if investigative journalism goes away, we'll count on the crooked politicians just to fess up, just to say, I'm a crook, and that's it. No, you know, the internet, the great thing about the internet is anybody can publish on it. The awful thing about the internet is anybody can publish on it. And I'm afraid people have not become very sophisticated about what's what on there. Investigative journalism is expensive, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and often doesn't pay off. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't sell. You know, when I was in DC, one of the greatest investigative things I've ever seen was a Washington Post, based on just one tip from somebody, broke off 3 reporters for basically a year, and they produced a report on the horror of treatment at Walter Reed Hospital and how disgraceful veterans were being treated, veterans on active duty. And it took a long time to do that. You know, the product's got to be a mix. It's got to have some of that, but it also has to have, you know, the thing with online is when we just had the print paper, here's the illusion and fantasy we lived under. If I had a story on the front page on a Sunday, so say we had 150,000 readers. So in my mind, well, 150,000 people read every word of that, probably shared it with their friends. So, you know, probably 30 trillion people read that. Now, we knew that wasn't true, but how are you going to prove it? Online, the metrics are so specific on how many hits something gets, how long readers stay with it. And, you know, in trying to monetize the online product, unfortunately, number of hits becomes important, because the more of those you get, it's sort of like circulation. You then go to advertising and say, this many people looked at this page, and if you had an ad there, they would have seen that ad. And sadly, often the things that get the most hits, there's an inverse relationship between effort and hits. An investigative project that takes 6 months to do, and, you know, might fill up 4 pages of the newspaper in print, doesn't do real well online often, whereas the you know, quick hit stuff will do it. So sometimes in the mix, among the most valued things is something that's real quick and gets a lot of hits. You know, in the old days, we would do surveys of readers. What do you want to read? And of course, because everyone wants to seem smart, the answer is, oh, you know, international affairs, a lot about the United Nations. Now, really, they want to read about the Kardashians, but they don't want to admit it. And again, this is because many people are humans. So it's a challenge. How it's going to go on. And one thing, and I should have mentioned this earlier, the business model obviously is busted. So the next thing might be, and we have a great example of it here in Austin, is nonprofit journalism. And I mean the intentionally nonprofit kind. And we have the Texas Tribune here in town. Been in business, I think, about 10 years now. They do a great job. They've hired a lot of the best people in town. They do a great job. It is nonprofit. They do it on, you know, they basically sell what amounts to advertising on their website, and also just donations as a nonprofit, and also had a very wealthy man who bankrolled the whole thing to start with, and I think still gives them a lot of money. But they've made it work, and they do great journalism. In a lot of ways, they're a competitor of ours. The problem there, not the problem, but the reality is it's a special interest publication. They write about politics and government. And if you're interested in a deep dive on that, it's an indispensable resource. So, and those are popping up all over the country. It's a great experiment. And, you know, I think now it's proven to be a successful experiment. You just have to have people willing to voluntarily give money, which is the same thing you do with a newspaper, but also need some big donors to bankroll it. And that's an experiment in progress. And like I said, the Tribune experiment is very successful.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, Ken, if you will allow me a moment just to adjourn the meeting and take care of some final business, we'll have other questions for you. Yes, okay. Thank you. Well, thank you. Let me thank Ken for his wonderful comments. It's always so timely and always with that taste of humor and being again timely. Let me ask Mac, get back with Mac. Mac, I believe you have our program next week, and would you tell us about that, please?
Yeah, next week, we're going to hear from Jackie Nuremberg, is a spokesperson for Capital Metro. And if y'all remember, Austin voted on a $7 billion bond, that's billion with a B, for infrastructure, for transit. And so we'll hear about that next week. Come hear how your tax dollars will be at work.
All right, thank you. And hope everyone can join us again next week. Let me say again, it's the 7th of January. We are 1 week into the year and already such history-making events taking place. But again, looking forward with a positive eye and hoping that our Lions Club will continue to serve the community. Remember that January 22nd, we have our Meals on Wheels service. Judy Stahl reminded us about the recycled boxes. So that's another service project that our club does for the community. And so I believe that brings us to the end of our meeting, unless there are other hands up that might need to make an announcement. All right, seeing none, thank you so much for joining us today. Please stay with us and ask your questions to Ken, and otherwise this meeting is adjourned.
Ken, this is Mark. You know, we talked about investigative journalism. What kind of concerns me most about the downturn of say newspapers and also local TV stations is the loss of local journalism, of journalism for the locality. Certainly you can find national journalism anywhere in the Washington Post and the broadcast networks and so on, but it's the local news that in fact, in my opinion, that has more direct impact on me, on whether my street gets paved, and I don't really care as much of what happens on the national level. I wonder what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great challenge. And I should have mentioned this, but you know, in the challenge to make money online, the ones who have figured it out are the New York Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal also. The secret for them is very simple: potential worldwide audience. So if their penetration is 2%, they probably do fine. Locals need more than that. And it is a great challenge. And there is a movement these days to sort of get people to appreciate, and that means pay for, local journalism. We are starting to have what are becoming news deserts, where there have been some papers in some smaller towns in Texas that have closed down. Just can't make a living. And that means, you know, some city hall not getting covered at all, especially in a small town where there's no one else. Yeah, the big national papers do a great job on big national stories or stories in their area, but they're not going to care much about some other town unless a hurricane comes in or something. So that's a great challenge. And again, those of us in journalism, we're very haughty about how important it is and everything. And I really think it is. And it's going to be a problem if it doesn't survive somehow. You know, we're fortunate in Austin. I think some of the TV stations do a very good job, and we're fortunate to have them, but there are limitations TV has, and you need it all. But that's why we appreciate people who are willing to pay for it, for the product.
Go ahead, Ellen.
I was going to ask Ken, well, first I was going to say I have had the first COVID and vaccine and had minimal tenderness from it. But my question to Mr. Herman is the balance between considering prosecuting Trump, if you believe there have been criminal activities, versus bringing the country more together.
That's such a tough one. And I waver on that, because one thing I'm looking forward to, and please know I'm someone who has always in the past found Republicans to vote for. I consider myself an independent, kind of towards the middle, and I've split my ticket in the past. I am among the people, and I probably speak for the nation here, torn between I am so eager to go a few days without thinking about him, and on the other hand, you know, lock him up. It may be better for the country to just let him live his miserable life and not let him, you know, eat up all the ether and have him on our mind all the time. The problem is he's not going to go away. He's going to continue to hold rallies. He's going to continue to tease us about running for president again in 4 years. I point out this: in 4 years, he'll be 78 years old. We haven't elected a 78-year-old since November, I think, has been the last time we did it. So It's just, everything about it is just bizarre. I am convinced, if not the worst president ever, he is certainly the worst person ever to be president. And remember, I think 8 of our presidents owned slaves. So it's a pretty high bar there. It's just, even yesterday in everything, it's just about him. All politicians have egos. There's nothing wrong with that. Many human beings have egos. I even don't even like, people say, oh, Ted Cruz, he just wants to be president. I don't have a problem with that, with ambition. Now, how you go about it is one thing, but yes, someone who thinks they should be or can be president, you have a pretty high opinion of yourself, and you better, because it's a pretty tough job. But as I've always said, and I think I may have mentioned the column today, what I learned when I was covering the White House is, and everyone knew this before I got there, a president's words move markets and militaries. And as we found out this week, move mobs also. And you just got to be careful what you say. I can't tell you how many hours I spent in the White House briefing room, either with the president speaking or more often the press secretary. And you just want to smack them because they won't say anything. It's always, oh, all options are on the table. And, they're just so careful. As a journalist, it drives you crazy. As a citizen, you realize you got to be a little careful. You got to watch what you say. I'll give this to Trump. He's the most transparent president and in some ways predictable we've ever had, because anything he thinks comes out through his fingers to Twitter. And it's horrifying sometimes. But, when you think back at how careful our other presidents are, but it's just what he is. He's a promoter, he's a huckster. And here's the problem at his age. First of all, people that age, not going to change much anyway, but here's his world in his head. And I get it. You're telling me I should change. Women seem to like me. I think I've made a lot of money and I got to be president. What am I doing wrong? And I kind of get it. It kind of reinforces whatever psychosis he deals in that. And what he loves more than anything, obviously, and who among us doesn't, a rally of people screaming your name and undying loyalty. And it's not healthy for him, and it's not healthy for the country. We've never seen anything close to this. And so the answer is, I don't know. I don't know if I want to throw the book at him because you want to, you can't get away with crimes, or just let's move on. Because if we throw the book at him, there'll be mob scenes outside of courthouses. Again, on the third hand here, you can't make decisions based on what mob scenes are going to do. It's the problem, as I wrote months ago, he's either going to win or he's going to lose this past November. And either way, we have a problem. And what we're seeing in this compressed period, my concern, if he had gotten reelected, I think I would have been in favor of getting rid of the 2-term limit, because the thought of him 4 years as a lame duck where he doesn't have to run, worry about running again. We're seeing that in a compressed, 3-month period now. I also don't know why we wait till January 20th to do inaugurations. Years ago it was in March when you had to get in a horse and buggy to get to DC. I don't know why January 20th. I just think move it up to January 1st when the senators and other people who get elected in November take office January 1st. Why not the president? Why this extended period? Maybe for the transition it takes longer, but you would think in normal times, even if the new president took office January 1st, the old president and staff could be around to continue helping whatever is needed. And maybe that's the reason it's 3 weeks later than everybody else. It's the transition is important and it can take some time.
We have a question from Alan Ford.
Yes, Ken, yesterday, one of my never give up social media friends posted one of these memes that says, this is how the Nazis took over Germany. And it lists all these various things: banning guns, getting rid of God, banning church services, burning Bibles and books, tearing down statues, burning the flags, etc. Put their country in a state of fear, and then says, same scam, different century, new sheep. Now, I've read enough history to know that most of those things the Nazis did after they put their country in a state of fear of communists and inferior races and convinced them of German exceptionalism, if you will. How do we counter that kind of disinformation that's kicking around out there? Because these people are conflating a couple of decades of German history into one thing that way.
Yeah,
how do you deal with that? How do you address it?
I don't know, and it's so dangerous, and World War II and Nazism was a very complicated thing. Started probably with a Treaty of Versailles after World War I that was pretty onerous on Germany, and that's why after World War II, with Marshall Plan and stuff, we realized, we need to help people we just defeated, not because we love them, but because it's good for us in the long run. And and now these, not that many years later, Germany and Japan as allies. I don't know, but it's frightening to me what people believe. And some of it is, I think, this. For reasons not in anyone's control, really, some people's lives have become difficult. One thing that's happened is, in the old days, however you want to define that, there were more ways to make a living just by sort of carrying heavy stuff around and doing things. A lot of jobs have gone away, and things change so quickly now. Your skills that you have for a job may not get you a job. And if you're 50 years old, it's fine for people to say, oh, we're going to do retraining and stuff. But the reality of that is hard. So I think there's a lot of people looking, and this is where danger comes from, looking for someone to blame. It's got to be someone's fault that my life is hard. Now, one thing is, if you dropped out of school in 6th or 7th grade, and it often may not be your fault, but life's going to be a little hard. Life's going to be difficult in a competitive economy like we have. And, we like to think we have safety nets. It's never enough. And then there are other people if you worked in the coal mine and that job goes away because things have evolved, life's going to be hard. And when someone comes along and says, I'm going to make everything better immediately, it's attractive. I remember seeing some of that when in Ross Perot's 2 presidential runs, attracted some people like that whose lives had become hard for often reasons not of their own, sometimes their own reasons. And someone comes along and says, I have all the answers. Make America great again. And I remember going to a couple of Trump rallies when he was running. I would go in the line as people waiting to get in and ask each person in the Make America Great Again, tell me, when do you think America was at its great or greatest? And they'd all have answers, and they were all reasonable, except anything they picked for me, I could tell them why at that time America might not have been so great for some other people. Like if people tell me, oh, back in the 50s it was great. And yeah, it was great. If you were a healthy white male, it was a heck of a time to be an American. If you were anything else, it wasn't so great. America is great, always has been, and we're still searching for the more perfect union. But I'm not sure it's at any time in the past that we really want to do. We want to take the best of a lot of eras. But that's the problem. I am understandably very hesitant and push back at people who throw the word Nazi around for people, because it's a special thing, awful special thing. But Trump's cult of personality is the closest I've seen to anyone who's been successful in politics. And he's been successful in politics in his one real political endeavor. And it's his greatest talent, speaking to a crowd. And, he can go, God bless him, he can go for an hour, hour and a half. Most times his crowds start leaving before he's done because it just goes on too long. He doesn't know when enough's enough. But whatever you think of that particular talent, he's good at it.
We had one question from Ann Ward, and I think that maybe we'll close it up because we're taking a lot of your time, and I appreciate you for hanging on.
Happy to do it.
Hello, Ken.
Hi there.
I am also a subscriber, and I read your column this morning, and that's what I wanted to kind of ask about. What I saw on the national news last night and what you reflected in your column this morning is kind of the pushback on Texans who were in leadership roles in inciting what happened yesterday, leading what happened yesterday. And I'm thinking particularly of Ted Cruz. And there was a lot of negative comments in the national press yesterday and last night. Mm-hmm. But my question is, what impact do you think what happened yesterday is going to have here in Texas? Are Texans, I'm appalled by what I saw yesterday, but something tells me there are probably a lot of Texans who aren't, and that concerns me.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's the Rorschach test, whatever you believed before yesterday just firmed it up in your mind. And, with Ted Cruz, perhaps more than anyone here, it's as much as how he says stuff. It's just Ted Cruz is a smart guy, but he's just he's so convinced that he's right, and it's just something about his personality that it's hot. You're either going to love him or really, really dislike him. Our other senator, John Cornyn, who looks like he's from Central Casting for a U.S. senator, he may or may not like his policies, but you just won't have the same emotional reaction as you do to Cruz. And Cruz, it just, you think back to when he was running against Trump and all that went on with Trump calling Cruz's wife ugly and his father killed John Kennedy. And I guess, God bless you, Ted Cruz, for being able to get over that and work with the man who beat you and was president. On the other hand, are you kidding me here? And, he's just trying to get on, again, his ambition. I don't downplay ambition. I'm glad some people want to be president, but, his goal is to, if Cruz people are available, the Trump people, that they will become Cruz people in 2024. What happened in 2016 was Trump out-Cruzed Cruz. I mean, Cruz's thing was, I was going to be the guy. I get a rally going and everything, and I'm far out there on the wing, and Trump just outdid him on all that. He outflanked him on that. And there would be some entertaining justice if both of them sought the Republican nomination in 2024. Now, I really don't think Trump will run again, and two reasons. One, he will be pretty old, but two things can happen. He can win, he can lose. If he wins, he has to be president again. I'm not sure he really wants to be president, and I don't know if his ego can take losing. Some of you remember Bill Clements was our governor a couple of times, and he ran and won again after having been ousted by Mark White. And he won, I think he beat him in 78 it was when he ousted it, whatever. No, maybe in 86. And I remember Clements' aides telling me the problem was once he had beaten Mark White, he had accomplished everything he wanted to do. And then he also had to be governor for 4 years. All he wanted to do. Now, that's not a good motivation for running for public office. Probably all too frequently is. But, Cruz isn't done yet. And he divides the House in an unhealthy way because you either really, really like him or really, really dislike him. I prefer my politicians of let me know what you're for and against as opposed to how you perform that. And then I can make a decision.
All right, I'm going to pass it on to Rudy, but I have just one confirmation I need from you. We usually record the meeting and we post it on our YouTube channel for our other members. Is that all right with you?
It's just the usual $20,000 fee and unmarked bills. Not a problem. No, absolutely fine.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Rudy, go ahead.
Yeah, Gaylord, I see your hand up.
Gaylord Armstrong, my first year in the lobby was 69. Cruz and old Tom Craddock says, don't quit now, Gaylord. You and I are the only ones left for the class of 69. I wasn't a member. I started lobbying, but part of my program has always been you got to know the players, you got to know the program, but you got to know press. And I've always been a believer in returning every call, but getting to know and get along with the press. And what is the future given the change in the role?
It's all changed, and it's for the worse, I think, for everyone involved. The ultimate goal always was to get around us. They viewed us as a filter. But again, when we being the press as a whole, had a monopoly on communications to the public, they had to sort of get along with us whether they liked us or not. Now they don't give a damn about us because they have many ways to get directly to their own people, and they don't care. And here's the big thing that's changed, Gaylord, in all the years since you've been there. When we used to cover people running for governor, we would spend many, many hours with them flying around on small planes, and you'd really get to know them as people. And I always, in most cases, even with Phil Graham, found them to be pretty decent people, really wanting to do good. Now they don't need us. They don't want us. On the other hand, I'm not sure we would spend the money now to travel around with them like we used to. And we just don't get to know them as much because they have found a way around the filter. It's the dream come true for them. Dan Patrick has no use for us whatsoever.
Well, my bottom line question was, what's the future of the Capitol Press Corps?
Smaller. We won't be in the chambers this year. There's fewer outlets. The biggest change, and this already had happened, is fewer out-of-town papers or and TV stations are willing to have full-time bureaus here. Used to be stations from Houston and Dallas would have full-time bureaus here. That's long gone. Just smaller operations. Some huge percentage of the whole Capitol Press Corps now works for the Texas Tribune. They hire a lot of people, some young people, some veterans. They have a big staff, and you know, if not for them, the press corps would be much smaller than it was. You know, Gaylord, you remember when we were in the building there, our press room was right outside the House chamber, which was convenient and nice. That's long gone. It's in transition, let's put it that way, and I'm not sure it's for the better. But that's because all of us, and I think we can all agree on this, everything used to be better, correct? I know I used to be better. My wife hates when I tell her everything used to be better.
Well,
Thank you so much, Ken.
See you at the Capitol.
Let me call time. Thank you, Ken, for your generous time that you've allowed for our questions. And keep on writing those good articles.
Keep on reading them. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Take care. Stay safe, everybody.
All right. And the same to all our Lions that have stayed with us. Y'all have a good week. Stay safe, and we'll see you at next Thursday's Zoom meeting. Y'all take care.